Your Denver Broncos just get absolutely bombarded with fantastic news. Not only are we hearing more and more great things out of the joint practice with the San Francisco 49ers, but the train is off the track for the rest of the AFC West. We are breaking it all down and more in this video. We're actually going to go to behind enemy lines at the end of this video and talk to a San Francisco 49er creator who is kind of in love with your Broncos defense. That's fantastic, but we've got to just jump in here too. Just what a giant bullet the Broncos dodged by not drafting Ashton Jeanty. I'm not going to lie, the player who I wanted the Broncos to draft was Ashton Jeanty. The thing that was always ringing in the back of my head was like the performance that we saw out of Ashton Jeanty in college was on a blue turf field against a bunch of dudes who are now probably selling insurance for Allstate. There were only 6 players out of the entire Mountain West last year who were actually drafted in the NFL, and only 2 of them were on defense, and it didn't happen until the 6th round. So he was not playing against NFL caliber defenses his entire time playing on blue turf at Boise. And so last night against the backups for the Seattle Seahawks, we see him just absolutely not look like him. So here is a negative 4-yard loss where he tries to dance around and do stuff that he could do at Boise State, and you mess around like that in the NFL and you absolutely find out. So we found out last night, Ashton Jeanty's first game ever as a Vegas Raider, this player that we've just been hearing so much out of Raiders camp about, like, he looks phenomenal, he looks so good, and he ran for 3 carries for a negative 1 yard average. Now, before you jump all over me and say it was just one game in the preseason, like, you got to remember that, yes, one game in the preseason. How did Saquon Barkley look in his first ever touch in the NFL? This was Saquon Barkley's first ever preseason touch. Yeah, he takes it for 39 yards. Same thing. He's in the backfield, but like he is a universal once in a lifetime type talent. And so his first ever preseason game, his first ever touch, 39 yards. We've got Christian McCaffery's stats here for his first ever game in the preseason as well. And they up against a very good Houston Texans team and a very good front. That this was when they had like Jadeveon Clowney and a great front. 7 times for 33 yards for a 4.7 yard average clip. And then you look at Saquon's first ever carries in the NFL as well. He's going 5 carries for 43 yards, 8.6 yards per clip. So to come out and hammer the Raiders over because you think Ashton Jeanty is going to be him, I'm just telling you from what we saw in one game, and it is one game, I could be totally wrong here, but I think this is going to be a lot like a lot of Raiders hype that we've seen in the past that just ends up being absolutely nothing. So that's great. And I think part of the reason that we heard all of the hype out of Raiders is that they had a bad defense last year that lost a ton of talent, lost Spillane. We've went over it ad nauseum on here. And so even one of the biggest Raiders creators, he's not Graphic Raider, who's our actual favorite here, but he is a big name here. Sanjay came out and said, hey, the Raiders run defense last night was horrible. And that was the first team Raiders run defense against the second team Seattle Seahawks run offense. And so this is just all shaping up to be absolutely phenomenal and perfect. Other thing, I don't want to celebrate and do victory laps over someone's injury, but now the highest paid offensive lineman, arguably the best offensive lineman on the Chargers' entire O-line, just got the absolute bag, and he had a torn patellar tendon, just a season-ending injury, and that's an injury that a lot of guys never come back for. I'm hoping the best for him, but we can't lie and act like this isn't great news for the Broncos because they're going to have a much harder time blocking the run game. And it gets even better here that on top of that, you're hearing Ladd McConkey still hasn't practiced. That's why they went out and did a flyer there this offseason on Mike Williams, who then retired. And then they did another flyer on Keenan Allen, who's just been sitting around and nobody wants him anymore. And then we're seeing that Najee Harris still has not actually been able to open his eye. Again, not wishing for injuries on anyone. That's a horrible thing. I'd be furious if something bad happened to a Bronco and another creator was like, dancing on their grave. But all this is fantastic news for us. Absolutely. Then we continue to hear just unanimous praise about your Broncos defense, your Broncos offense, your Broncos special team, although Will Lutz did miss 3 field goals yesterday. Kyle Shanahan came out and kind of excused the poor play for his team yesterday by saying, you know what, I actually think these guys are going to be one of the best teams in the league. Hearing Kyle Shanahan say that, then hearing him also give gushing praise about Bo Nix, saying we were a huge fan of him in college. We didn't know what the Bears were doing when they got Caleb Williams instead of him. And I just can't help but think all of these dudes in their mom's basement, and now I'm back in Michigan. I'm in my basement, so I can say this. But all of these dudes who thought they know better than Sean Payton, because Caleb Williams is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, Ashton Jeanty is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and we're getting RJ Harvey and Bo Nix, who's not on anybody's draft board, but actually is the far superior talent, in my opinion. But we got to hop over here. So I got my main man, Nate. We are going to go behind enemy lines and actually hear, so you don't just think I'm like putting words in their mouth. We're going to hear from another creator. I need to apologize on behalf of all of Broncos country that we came into your house and completely owned you in every asset of the game. And I just hope you'll accept my apology.
Apology not accepted.
Okay. So much. I mean, there are so many crossovers between our franchises with
Incredible.
Hufanga and Greenlaw and Lynch and Shanahan and all that. So like, I don't
McGlinchey,
hate yeah, totally, man. So many.
DJ Jones.
All these guys that you wanted and they came to Denver. So we got to talk about all that. But let's start off, man. Like, what are your impressions of the Denver Broncos after, seeing training camp?
Straight up, everybody, and I'm not just saying this, everybody is raving about that Broncos defense. I'm genuinely, every single angle you take on 49ers offense and Broncos defense, it has something to do with how good that Broncos defense is. You guys balled out and are as good as advertised. Like swagger, intensity. You know what? I genuinely am not even kidding. Turn on the radio this morning, okay? Bay Area radio station. The exact first words, I had to write them down because I knew I was going to talk to you today. The exact first words that I heard were this: we have to caveat this whole conversation with that Denver defense. It isn't just good. They're unbelievable. They were awesome last year. They are humming now. And there is a confidence and swagger about them. They believe. That is literally, I had turned it on. I was like, I'm turning the radio station off. I can't listen to that.
Oh, I could listen to that all day, man. And twice on Sunday. I mean, there are a couple caveats. Like, obviously, I think this 49ers offense will be much better. Trent didn't play all of the team periods, I heard. Like he did a couple individual drills and didn't do the whole team period. He's one of the best tackles in the game. And then you were without Ayuk. And I think that's a different offense. Kittle, Christian McCaffery looked amazing. But yeah, I think then on our side, like we also didn't have Brandon Jones, our starting safety, who, was one of the highest in PFF. We didn't have Dre Greenlaw. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And yes, and Alex Singleton. So you got 3 starters missing on both sides. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think
if I could jump in on there and tell you, like, from my perspective, so I just had to do a quick Google search too, and I checked PFF, and people are still sleeping on how good your defensive line is. Your defensive line is unbelievably good. I think it's easily a top 5 defensive line. I felt that way last year watching the Broncos in several games, feeling like they were unbelievably good. And I think this year you brought in downhill Hufanga, you brought in downhill Dre Greenlaw, you brought in impact players, guys that hit you and make you feel it when you get hit. And so I can't see a world in which, also having guys like Pat Surtain out there, you guys don't have a top 5 overall defense. I think the 49ers fan base is probably sleeping on how good your secondary is, because they looked absolutely incredible yesterday with guys missing. It just looked incredible. Pat Surtain looked fantastic. Nobody's really surprised that Pat Surtain is good, but yeah, I was definitely surprised by that. And if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm thinking about Vance Joseph, and I'm saying, hey man, go look over at the Kansas City Chiefs, division rivals, and look at what Spagnuolo's doing over there, because maybe there's a better shot with Vance Joseph being a defensive coordinator for the rest of his life, getting a lot of rings with the Denver Broncos, than he would have as a head coach somewhere else. If I'm Vance Joseph, I don't know how the Denver Broncos managed to bring a guy who failed as a head coach, from my perspective at least, back in as a defensive coordinator, and then he still managed to have the humility and swagger to make this defense as good as it is. I was completely blown away by how good the defense is, and so is everybody else in the Bay Area.
Well, that's awesome, man. And I think, if we hung on to Vance and he took a Spagnuolo deal, that'd be amazing. And I guess if he goes somewhere, we get compensatory picks for him. So I guess it's win-win there. But I would, man, if he could hang around and this defense could keep humming, because until we got Greenlaw and Hufanga, we only had 1 first-round draft pick on this whole defense, which makes it even more impressive. Wow. But tell me, what can we expect in Denver from Hufanga and Greenlaw? Like, you've watched them intimately over time, and John Lynch and Shanahan flew out to try to convince Dre Greenlaw to stay. What makes them nasty and good players in your opinion?
Yeah, so to get the negative out of the way, right off the bat, obviously both of them have their injury concerns, and so you got to see health. That's the thing that you're going to want to see more than anything. The best abilities, availability, that whole thing, right? But in terms of what they bring to your team, and I'll just look at last year, the moments when Hufanga came back from injury and when Greenlaw came back from injury, both of which were standout moments in the season for this very terribly struggling defense last year. The 49ers defense was. So Hufanga comes in, you've got a leadership and there's a presence about him. It's not just the flowing hair, like the Troy Polamalu kind of hair. Like, it's not just that. It is a physical intensity that you feel when he's like, like wide receivers hear footsteps, right? He's one of those players that makes you hear footsteps. You don't hear footsteps when
you hear hoof steps from Hufanga.
Hoof steps.
Yeah.
There you go.
Totally.
So Talanoa Hufanga is going to give you that. And then Dre Greenlaw is I like to think of him as a thumper, as an old school linebacker, as a guy that when similar to Hufanga, like the spine of your defense is now filled with guys who are absolute powerhouses. And so when you get hit by Dre Greenlaw, you feel hit by Dre Greenlaw, and there's an argument to be made. I'd still say right now, Fred Warner's the best linebacker in the league. No question in my perspective. But the thing about Dre Greenlaw that we haven't ever got a chance to see, that you'll now get to see in Denver, is what happens when he's the mic? What happens when he's the man? What happens when he gets put in the position to be the leader, to be the guy who calls the shots, to run the game? And I think that is what's going to be really interesting. You put a linebacker. This is a Ray Lewis situation. Think about this for a second. I know you've got some bad memories, Broncos country with Ray Lewis, but listen for a second. You put a linebacker, a middle linebacker who's stout and who's muscular, who's a powerhouse, and you put him behind a good defensive line, you will never see the ball make it up the middle of the field. That's what Ray Lewis was good at.
You got the best player in football out there, so totally that makes me wildly pumped. If you got the spine of your defense taken care of, we already know we led the league in sacks last season, and then you have the best player on the defensive side of the football in Pat Surtain. So that's adding up super nicely, and a lot of comparisons being made to the no-fly zone. And yeah, if you have a number one defense and top 10 offense, that's a recipe for a Super Bowl. But I guess there had to be some bet. Like, if you were a Broncos fan, what did you see out of camp and hear out of camp that you'd be, or out of that joint practice, that would have you concerned?
Yeah, I've got two questions right now, and I'm genuinely curious what you think on this, because I don't know what I think about it. But I'd say the first one is absolute crickets from the running back room. I heard nothing, at least from the 49ers fan base side. I heard nothing about running backs from the Denver Broncos, and that was a position you guys went into the offseason saying this is the most important thing you did. And I know you moved in free agency. I know you drafted RJ Harvey. So I know that you've moved in that position in that way. But I just didn't hear a lot coming around people being excited about the running back room. So I'd be interested in that. The second one I'd be interested in is I'd love to talk to you about McGlinchey, former 49er. I'd be interested on that one too, because Nick Bosa had his way. So totally. I'll let you take the floor and tell me why I'm not wrong on that.
Well, yeah, I think the running back room, from what I saw, it looked like we were averaging 6 yards per clip. It's hard to tell because, like, while they were hitting, I saw all the highlights come out yesterday. Like, they hit somebody, but they don't actually take them to the ground, so you can't see, can they make people miss and actually break out of some of those arm tackles. But I think it is a massive upgrade, because the training camp I went to for the Denver Broncos, those were 2 and 3 yard gains that I'm like, oh no, our running back room is going to suck. And so then to see that be 5 and 6 yard against you, it did feel like a step forward. And so I would say, I think Sean Payton feels really confident in this running game. And I think the other part of that is, we have this season changed from going to a power running game to doing a wide zone. And there's no team who is better situated to defend against that than y'all, because that's what you run as well. And so I think you're kind of uniquely situated in that way. And Bosa, truly, man, I would say I would take our edge rushers in totality over yours, but Bosa is better than anyone we have. And so as far as McGlinchey, he had a rumor or a nickname of being called Mick Flinchy for a while here, because he had a lot of false start penalties. But I think folks are like, man, we have one of the best offensive lines in football, and he has really come a long way. So what else? Is there bad blood between our franchises? Because I'd seen a couple rumblings on Twitter that Shanahan and Lynch were upset about the Greenlaw situation, and we had been a super tight franchise, and I don't know if that added to any of the chippiness yesterday.
It hasn't been a big storyline. And honestly, I mean, you look at yesterday, there's a little bit of scuffle and stuff, but looking at last year's training camp, we needed that. We didn't actually get to have any joint practices because of all of last year's injuries. And so this year, being able to have those joint practices, Kyle Shanahan thinks the joint practices are far more valuable than the preseason games. And so we really needed that. And we didn't have that same intensity last year. This year, we're seeing a lot more scuffles and things like that. There were some scuffles and a little bit of pushing and shoving. There weren't any fights, and that's okay. I'd say that that's probably a sign, if anything, that they are in decent. I think the chirping from the defense, the Broncos defense, has been noted by a lot of reporters. There was a lot of chirping from the Broncos defense, a lot of confidence and swagger, and talking up big. And in fact, one of them, Trent Williams, offensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers, is chopping it up with some defensive guys from the Broncos as they're chirping at our offense. So that was a little bit like, hey, come on now.
Well, we just came and marked our territory, man. The last time we were in Levi Field, we just won a Super Bowl, and now we're just getting ready to come back there in a couple of months and do it again. And I can honestly say, because of the Shanahan connection and the Christian McCaffery connection and John Lynch, I hope we see you there, man. So thank you so much. I will link to your show there. I'm going to go over there and talk to you about what the good things I saw out of the 49ers, man. So make sure if you're watching here on Sports Talk Denver, you go check out Nate's stuff as well. And are you a believer?
I'll be honest with you. Like, I did not feel like I was a believer before. What I'm hearing right now and the confidence that people have and how good Bo Nix is on the 49ers side, I'm becoming a little bit of a believer.
That's what I like to hear, man. All right. Sounds good. We'll catch you over on yours.